Hello, my name's Rob and welcome to Swift Slots. And welcome to this Pendle Slot Racing 1/32 scale resin slot car build. And the subject of today's build is this rather unique sidecar build. So without further ado, let me get you on my table, we'll go through the kit and we'll build this in its entirety and then run it around the track. So when you receive your kit from Pendle Slot Racing, it will be delivered to you in this very nice, sturdy white box. And inside the box, you will find your full kit neatly presented in lots of bubble wrap. And inside the box, you will receive one resin cast body, cast to the highest standard, as we can see here. You will also receive this pack of parts, just here. Inside one pack of parts, you will get your very nice 3D printed chassis. And in the other pack of parts, you will receive all the small parts needed to complete your kit. So there's a fittings pack there, there's the wheels and tyre pack there, there is a gear pack there, and also some resin parts being the head and the wheel inserts. And here we have all the parts of the kit all laid out. We have a cast resin body with heads and cast resin wheel inserts, we have a guide pack, a screw pack, a grub screw pack, a slim can motor fitted with a brass pinion gear, 3D printed chassis, nice pair of brass bearings, 3 axles, 3 alloy wheels, 3 tyres and a main rear gear. And here are all the resin parts of the kit all laid out. And as you can see, we have a very clean one-piece resin casting of a motorbike and sidecar. There's plenty of detail in this casting, including a driver's torso and also a passenger with his foot hanging out. There's also a front grille and side grills. And on the underside, we have 3 body fixings. The body is basically ready for painting with very little cleanup to do. All you'll need to do is just run around the edge and just check that all the edges are nice and clean. I think this kit is an extremely good kit for a beginner, owing to the simplicity of the body. Also in the kit, you get the 2 heads of the driver and the passenger, and you also get 3 wheel inserts also cast in resin, all ready to paint up and go into the wheel centres. So here are all the parts of the chassis all laid out for you to see. And because this is clearly a very unique 3-wheeled chassis, I'd like to spend a few minutes just showing you how to assemble these parts. So the first thing you're going to want to do when you build your chassis is to insert 4 of the long grub screws into the front of the chassis using a 0.9 Allen key. So the grub screws in your chassis should look something like this, where they're flush to the bottom of the chassis and they're intruding into the aperture by approximately the same amount. So the next step is to assemble the front axle assembly, and for that you'll want to chop off the spacer on the side of the chassis, take your smallest axle, one of the slim wheels and one of the slim tyres and assemble it into the front of the chassis. And when you're finished, it should look exactly like that, where you have the large spacer on the inside of the wheel controlling the end flow of the axle, and the wheel should be free to turn. Don't worry about adjusting it exactly for the moment, you can do that when you get to the track. So the next step is to solder the wire to the motor and then fit the motor into the chassis using the 2 M2.5 screws. Once the motor has been successfully installed into the chassis, you want to go ahead and fit the remaining 4 long grub screws into the top and bottom of the middle section of the chassis. So once you've finished fitting your 4 remaining grub screws, they should look very similar to this, that being flush on the underside of the chassis and evenly spaced in the aperture, much the same as the front wheel was. So now we can move on to fitting the outer rear wheel, and that involves using the smaller of the 2 remaining axles, the small wheel, the small tyre, the axle stopper and the last remaining spacer on the chassis. And once you've finished fitting your rear wheel, it should look exactly like this, with the axle stopper on one side of the rear bulkhead and the small spacer on the other. Now we can move on to fitting the rear axle, and that will involve using the last remaining axle, the large alloy rear wheel, the large rear tyre, the gear and the 2 remaining brass bearings. And when you've finished fitting your rear axle, it will look exactly like this, and all turning very smoothly. Now it is worthy of note that the Allen key that you need on this rear crown gear is actually a 1.3mm Allen key. So now you've fitted the rear axle, that completes the chassis. All we now need to do is fit the front guide. So when it comes to the guide, you'll see that you have 2 choices. The first choice is this forward facing hole just here. The second choice is mounting the guide to this extending arm. Now, as you can see, if you put your guide in this forward mounting hole here, the slot of the track will run through this front wheel and mostly on the rear tyre. So if that doesn't suit your track, you can mount this side mounting arm, which moves the guide over by about 15 millimeters, and that will put the slot of your track right down the center of the vehicle. That means then that the front wheel and the rear wheel completely misses the slot and might be more favorable for your particular type of track. So I would favor the side mount for a Scalextric style track or Carrera or something like that, and possibly you could use the forward mounting guide for something like an MDF track where it's all completely flat and you're running on copper braid, for example. Now, it will be of note that if you use the side mount guide holder, you will need to take a little tiny notch out the body to allow for this arm, because it will protrude from the side of the body. So let's go ahead and fit the guide. And once you've fitted your guide, you should end up with the guide mounted to your chassis looking just like this if you've elected to use the side mounted guide, as I have done in this particular example. Now, it is worthy of note that the guide comes with two spacers, a thick one and a thin one. I've used a thin one on the bottom and a thick one on the top just underneath that screw. Now, your mileage may well vary. It does very much depend on the track that you're running as to where you fit those spacers and how you set up your front wheel. Looking from the underside, you can see the chassis looking just like that. Now, if you mount your guide in the front position, then obviously you're going to have a slightly different configuration and slightly different setup. That does very much depend on your track, like I said. Okay, so now the chassis is completely finished. Let's crack on and get the body finished. As I said earlier in this video, I believe that this kit is a fantastic beginner's first resin slot car build, primarily because the body is so easy to prepare. Having said that, it still does need a little bit of preparation, and for that you're going to want some 600 grit wet and dry sandpaper and some very fine Scotch-Brite pad. You can get both of these products from any automotive shop very easily. So all you need to do is just run around this bottom edge and just check for any fractional unevenness. Now, if you do find any little bits of unevenness, you can simply scrape it with a knife if it needs that much attention, or you can simply use your sandpaper and just very gently run around the edge and take off any imperfections that you might find. On this particular model here, you can see there's a little bit in there that could do with taking away, and there's a little bit of a lip just there that could be doing with taking away. Easier with the sandpaper, but like I say, if you need to use a knife, you can. So all I'll do now is I'll run around to the bottom of this model with the 600 and the Scotch-Brite, and also keep it nice and wet in some warm water with some dish soap. Once I've gone around the bottom, I'll go over the top of the whole model with a bit of the very fine Scotch-Brite just to give it a little bit of a key, and then we can go to primer. Now, because these bodies are low volume hand cast bodies, you might find the odd little tiny air bubble along the edge of your model. And if you do, all you simply do is take a scalpel and just pick out the hole that may be there. Just go along and pick out any little tiny dot. And once you've done that, get yourself any automotive car body filler and just mix up a little tiny dot of car body filler and push it into the little air bubble, and then give it 20 minutes or so and rub it down, and that will get rid of any little imperfection that you may have. At this stage of the build, it's well worth making yourself a small wooden stand like I've got here to aid you in painting. makes a very good solid base for when you need to put the model down between coats. And all I've done is I've got a 1-inch square piece of wood with a 2-inch square piece of plywood, screwed and glued them together, and then married a piece of plastic card on the top side to match the body mountings on the resin body, and screwed it down with the body's original screws. You can always put these in thinners after the paint job to clean up the screws again. That isn't a problem. And also remember to wear rubber gloves from this point on, because we do not want to be touching the resin body in between paint coats. So there we are, with the body now painted, we're pretty much finished. And I have to say, this is an extremely easy kit to put together with very little work to give a really great effect. So if you want something a little bit different and you want to start building resin slot car kits, this would not be a bad place to start. So let's paint the inside of that body black, clean up the screws, screw the chassis to the body, and put the drivers' heads on their bodies. So this has been the Pendle Slot Racing Sidecar Slot Car Resin build, and a very unique model it is too. Now if you're new to building slot cars, I would say this is skill level 1, just about as easy as it gets. The chassis goes together beautifully, the body has got so few parts it's not difficult to build, and if you've got an imagination you can do all sorts of paint liveries on this car. And if you're into motorbikes, I'm sure that this will be of interest to you, but if you just want something rather unique, this will also do it for you. So if you're interested in this model and you'd like to know more information about it that's not already on the Pendle Slot website, you can look at their website at the top of their page and you can contact them directly. So I hope that you've enjoyed this video, and if you have, maybe you'll subscribe to my channel, and if you could hit the little bell button, that would be awesome. So until the next time, thank you very much.